You clicked because the thumbnail said Fentanyl Hell Philadelphia. And it's not exaggeration. This is the reality. On the sidewalks of Kensington, survival looks like a blanket on cold concrete. Footpaths have become shelters, and ambulances sit like fixtures on the block.
By me. I was sitting at the bus stop eating pizza, and he started calling me a whore and a bitch, and I didn't even know it was him. And it hurt me so bad that when I ran into you to do the video, I wanted to lie about everything. I didn't want, just in case, if he saw it or somebody else in my family, I didn't want them to really know the full.
Philadelphia, the birthplace of freedom, now shows a different picture. Tents near busy streets, RVs turned into permanent homes, and families rushing past scenes they never imagined would define their city. This isn't rumor, it's daily truth. And here's why you need to stay until the end. What's happening here isn't just about fentanyl or homelessness. It's about survival, the breakdown of community, and a warning sign for every American city. By the time this video ends, you'll see how Philadelphia's crisis could become the blueprint for urban America's future. Hidden realities, the streets where fentanyl shapes daily survival. Philadelphia's fentanyl crisis isn't hidden in statistics, it's written directly on the streets. Within seconds of stepping into Kensington, you see what tourist maps skip. Sidewalks turned into shelters, blankets stretched across concrete, and tents pressed against storefronts that once thrived. This is not a temporary scene. It's the daily reality of survival. Street corners tell the story more vividly than any headline. Where commerce once defined the block, survival has replaced it. Small shops that used to sell groceries or clothes now stand shuttered, while the space outside becomes a fragile home for those with nowhere else to go. Ambulances sit like fixtures, their flashing lights less a surprise than a routine. For residents, this is not a crisis they read about, it's the backdrop of everyday life. The fentanyl wave has reshaped entire neighborhoods. Families rush home before dark, not out of habit, but necessity. Parents adjust routines, schools shorten activities, and businesses close earlier, all because the environment outside feels unpredictable. These choices aren't made for convenience. They're made for survival. What outsiders rarely see is the cycle that repeats itself daily. In the mornings, outreach teams clear sidewalks, trying to restore order. By nightfall, the same corners fill again. It's a rhythm of displacement and return, a loop that shows how fragile the system is. And behind every tent or blanket is a person carrying health challenges, broken support networks, and the weight of survival in a city struggling to keep up. Here's the fact that makes this undeniable. Philadelphia now faces some of the highest fentanyl-related struggles in the nation. This collapse didn't happen overnight. It was predictable. Years of economic decline, housing shortages, and gaps in healthcare created the conditions for fentanyl to take hold. The warning signs were visible long before the crisis became impossible to ignore. And yet, despite the scale, many Americans remain unaware of how deep it is. Runs. Outsiders hear about crime or homelessness, but they rarely see the sidewalks turned into shelters, the ambulances parked like permanent landmarks, or the families reshaping their lives around survival. These are the images that define Philadelphia's hidden crisis. The haunting question isn't just, why did no one act? It's deeper. How did the system allow collapse to become inevitable? In the next section, we'll look at one block that reveals the failures baked into the system itself, and why understanding that block explains the entire city's struggle. Ripple effect. How one block's collapse impacts families, businesses, and community life. To understand Philadelphia's crisis, you don't need to look at the entire city. You only need to stand on one block. A single street can reveal how fentanyl's grip ripples outward, reshaping families, businesses, and the very fabric of community life. Take Kensington Avenue as an example. Once a bustling corridor of shops, bakeries, and corner stores, it now feels like a different city. The sidewalks are lined with tents, and the rhythm of daily life has shifted. Where children once walked to school, parents now rush them past scenes they'd rather not explain. Families aren't adjusting routines for convenience. They're adapting for survival. Businesses feel the impact just as sharply. Store owners who used to keep doors open late now shut down before sunset. Customers are fewer, foot traffic has changed, and the sense of safety that once defined the block has eroded. For many small business owners, the choice is stark: close early and lose income, or stay open and risk uncertainty. Either way, the collapse of one block becomes the collapse of livelihoods. The ripple effect doesn't stop there. Community spaces, churches, schools, and local organizations struggle to maintain normalcy. Evening programs are canceled, youth activities cut short, and gatherings shrink. What was once a neighborhood hub now feels fractured. The fentanyl crisis doesn't just affect those living on the sidewalks, it reshapes the routines of everyone nearby. And the most haunting detail? The collapse is contagious. When one block falls, the surrounding streets feel the weight. Families move away, businesses relocate, and the sense of community thins. What begins as a concentrated crisis spreads outward, block by block, until the entire city feels the pressure.
Like the open wounds. It smells like open wounds, piss and shit. Constantly. And it's not even certain spots, it's just the way that it smells out here, period. It's nasty. Like, it literally makes me throw up sometimes.
This is why Philadelphia's struggle matters far beyond its borders. The ripple effect shows how quickly a single street can redefine an entire city. It's not just about crime or health. It's about economics unraveling, survival becoming routine, and communities breaking under pressure. The question now is, what triggered this turning point? How did one block's transformation become inevitable? In the next section, we'll uncover the quiet decisions and overlooked policies that accelerated Philadelphia's breakdown. And why. Understanding them is the key to preventing the same collapse in other American cities. Turning point. The quiet decisions that accelerated Philadelphia's breakdown. Every collapse has a trigger. In Philadelphia, the fentanyl crisis didn't explode overnight. It was accelerated by quiet decisions and overlooked policies that shaped the city's trajectory. To understand why one block became a symbol of breakdown, we need to look at the turning points that pushed the crisis from manageable to overwhelming. One of the most critical factors was the slow erosion of support systems. Years of underfunded housing programs and limited access to treatment centers meant that when fentanyl arrived, the city was already vulnerable. Shelters were overcrowded, outreach teams stretched thin, and healthcare facilities unable to meet the demand. The infrastructure wasn't prepared for a wave this powerful. Another turning point came from policing and enforcement strategies. In some areas, aggressive crackdowns pushed people out of sight, but not out of crisis. Corners were cleared, but the struggle simply shifted to new blocks. Instead of solving the problem, these decisions created a cycle of displacement, making the crisis harder to track and harder to contain. Economic decline added another layer. As businesses closed or relocated, jobs disappeared. With fewer opportunities, more residents slipped into instability. The collapse of commerce on certain streets wasn't just about shuttered shops. It was about the loss of anchors that once held communities together. When the economic foundation weakened, fentanyl filled the void. Perhaps the most overlooked decision was the delay in recognizing fentanyl's unique danger. For years, responses treated it like other substances, but fentanyl's potency and speed demanded a different approach. By the time officials acknowledged its scale, the crisis had already reshaped neighborhoods. This lag in response was a turning point that allowed the collapse to deepen. Together, these decisions, underfunded housing, enforcement strategies that displaced rather than solved, economic decline, and delayed recognition, formed the blueprint of breakdown. They didn't cause fentanyl, but they created the conditions for it to thrive. The haunting reality is that these turning points weren't dramatic headlines. They were quiet choices, budget cuts, and overlooked warnings. And that's what makes Philadelphia's collapse so unsettling. It wasn't inevitable, but it became inevitable because of the way the system responded. In the next section, we'll step back and ask the bigger question: why Philadelphia's struggle matters to every American city. Because the same decisions, economic neglect, weak housing support, delayed recognition, aren't unique to Philadelphia. They exist across the country. And if one city can collapse this way, others could follow the same path. America's warning: why Philadelphia's struggle could shape every U.S. city's future. Philadelphia's fentanyl crisis is not just a local tragedy, it's a national warning. What's unfolding on its streets today could easily become the reality of other American cities tomorrow. The collapse here is not unique. It's the result of vulnerabilities that exist across the country. The first warning is economic. When businesses close early, when jobs disappear, and when commerce is replaced by survival, the ripple effect spreads far beyond one block. Philadelphia shows how quickly economic foundations can unravel when a city is unprepared for a crisis. And the truth is, many U.S. cities face the same fragile conditions: declining industries, shrinking opportunities, and neighborhoods where stability is already thin. The second warning is social. Families in Philadelphia are reshaping routines not out of choice, but necessity. Parents rush children home before dark, schools cut evening activities, and community spaces shrink. This breakdown of normal life is not limited to one city. It's a pattern that could repeat anywhere fentanyl takes hold, eroding the sense of safety and community that keeps neighborhoods alive. The third warning is systemic. Philadelphia's collapse was accelerated by decisions: underfunded housing, delayed recognition of fentanyl's danger, enforcement strategies that displaced rather than solved. These are not Philadelphia-specific problems. They are national problems. Across the U.S., housing shortages, healthcare gaps, and delayed responses to emerging crises create the same vulnerabilities. If the system failed here, it can fail elsewhere. And perhaps the most unsettling warning is cultural. Philadelphia, the birthplace of American independence, now stands as a symbol of fragility. A city once celebrated for resilience is now a mirror reflecting how quickly collapse can spread when communities are left unsupported. That symbolism matters. It forces us to ask, if it can happen here, where else is next? By the end of this video, the message is clear. Philadelphia's struggle is not isolated. It's a blueprint for how fentanyl, combined with economic decline and systemic failure, can reshape any American city. The sidewalks turned into shelters, the ambulances parked like fixtures, the families rushing home before dark. These are not just Philadelphia's images. They are warnings of what could unfold in Chicago, Los Angeles, Houston, or any city facing the same cracks in its foundation. The question is no longer whether collapse can happen elsewhere. The question is how quickly it will spread if the same vulnerabilities remain unaddressed. Philadelphia is America's warning, and the time to pay attention is now, before more cities find themselves living the same reality. What comes next? Stories of survival and the fight to stop collapse. Philadelphia's fentanyl crisis is not just about statistics, it's about people. And to understand what comes next, we need to hear directly from those living it. Two stories, both captured in interviews available on YouTube, reveal the human side of collapse more clearly than any chart or headline. The first is Maria.
Where the fuck am I at? Where have you brought me? I've been all over the country and I've never seen a place like Kensington. And it was the chaos was appealing, if that makes sense. As an addict, we seek that sometimes, and my life had become very mundane, very boring, redundant.
A mother of two who lives near Kensington Avenue. In her interview, she describes how every evening she rushes her children home before dark. What used to be a walk past bakeries and corner shops is now a path lined with tents and blankets. Her children ask questions she struggles to answer. Why are people sleeping on the ground? Why are ambulances always here? Maria explains that survival means reshaping family routines, not out of choice, but necessity. Her story shows how fentanyl doesn't just affect those on the sidewalks. It reshapes the lives of families trying to protect their children. The second is David.
This is where human rights do not correspond with what capitalism's agenda is.
A small business owner who ran a hardware store for decades. In his interview, he recalls how his shop once stayed open late, serving neighbors who trusted him. But now, he closes before sunset. Foot traffic has dropped, customers avoid the block, and the sense of safety that once defined his business has eroded. David says, "I don't want to leave. This is my community. But every day feels like a gamble." His story shows how economic collapse is tied directly to the fentanyl crisis. When businesses fail, communities lose their anchors. These two voices, Maria rushing her children home, David closing his shop early, make the crisis undeniable. They remind us that behind every tent and ambulance siren are families and livelihoods being reshaped by survival. And because their interviews are publicly available, anyone can see and hear their words, making the reality impossible to dismiss. The question now is whether we treat Philadelphia's crisis as isolated or as America's warning. If ignored, Maria's children will grow up seeing collapse as normal. David's shop will close permanently, and more families and businesses will face the same choices. But if we act by strengthening housing, healthcare, and community support, these stories can change. Families can reclaim routines, businesses can thrive again, and survival can move off the sidewalks. Philadelphia's struggle is not just about fentanyl. It's about economics unraveling, communities breaking, and human dignity tested daily. These two stories are reminders that collapse is not inevitable. It's preventable. The choice is ours, to let these stories multiply across America, or to learn from them and stop the spread before it reaches other cities. Lessons learned. What Philadelphia teaches us about resilience and responsibility. By now, we've walked through the streets of Philadelphia, seen the sidewalks turned into shelters, heard the voices of families and business owners, and traced the quiet decisions that accelerated collapse. But the story doesn't end with warnings. It also leaves us with lessons. Module 7 is about reflection. What Philadelphia teaches us about resilience, responsibility, and the choices every city must face. The first lesson is about visibility. Collapse doesn't happen in secret. The signs were visible long before fentanyl reshaped Kensington Avenue. Tents on sidewalks, ambulances parked like fixtures, businesses closing early. These were signals that the system was breaking. The lesson is clear. Ignoring visible cracks only allows them to widen. Cities must learn to act when the warning signs first appear, not after collapse feels inevitable. The second lesson is about community resilience. Even in the midst of crisis, families adapt, businesses fight to stay open, and outreach workers show up daily. Philadelphia's struggle proves that resilience exists at the ground level. But resilience alone cannot solve systemic failure. The lesson here is that communities can endure only if they are supported by strong housing, healthcare, and economic foundations. The third lesson is about responsibility. Collapse is not just the result of fentanyl, it's the result of decisions. Underfunded housing programs, delayed recognition of fentanyl's danger, and enforcement strategies that displaced rather than solved all contributed to the breakdown. Responsibility means acknowledging that policy choices matter. The lesson is that prevention requires responsibility at every level: local, state, and national. The fourth lesson is about urgency. Philadelphia shows how quickly collapse spreads. One block becomes a symbol, then a neighborhood, then a city. The ripple effect is contagious. The lesson is that urgency cannot be delayed. Waiting for the crisis to settle only ensures it grows. Cities must act decisively, with urgency equal to the scale of the threat. Finally, the fifth lesson is about hope. Philadelphia is not defined only by collapse. It is also defined by its history of resilience, its role as the birthplace of American independence, and its communities that continue to fight for survival. The lesson is that collapse is not inevitable. With recognition, responsibility, and urgency, cities can resist the blueprint of breakdown. So what Philadelphia teaches us is simple but profound. Collapse is preventable, but only if we treat visible cracks as urgent warnings, support communities with real resources, and accept responsibility for decisions that shape the future. These lessons are not just for Philadelphia. They are for every American city and for any community facing the pressures of economic decline, housing shortages, and the fentanyl wave. Philadelphia's story is not just a warning, it is a teacher. And the choice now is whether we listen to its lessons or repeat its collapse. Thanks for watching. If this video opened your eyes, make sure to hit like and subscribe, because the next video will shock you, I promise.